So in this little video, I'd like to show you the Systematizer, which is a little Excel program I made to demonstrate a simple system in action. You can download the Excel program yourself and have a play around with it. If you do, you need to enable content, so click that button. So we have here the Systematizer, and this one is just a little system that learns and categorizes words, but you can have any kind of system like it: a number learning system, a plant learning system, animal categorization system. For some background on all this and systems theory, if you click this link here, it should open up a web page on my PhD blog, Storyality, which just has some information about systems theory, some cool little videos about systems and complexity theory and evolution on there, and some genetic algorithms, stuff about self-coupled systems, biological evolution, books on systems theory, more information about systems, and yeah, just more detail about systems theory, what it is and how it works. A cell as a system, other good books on systems theory, and there's some diagrams down here of other things that are systems. These things are all systems, from our planet's biosphere down through ecosystems, all the way down to organisms or people, tissues, cells, down to atoms. These are all systems. Anyway, you can have a look at that at some point. But so back to the Systematizer. So essentially this is a very simple diagram of a system. You have a system which is a black box in an environment, and the system has inputs and outputs from Sadowski, 1999. That's pretty much it. That's all the system is. If we zoom in on the black box of the system itself and see what the algorithms are inside, or the parts that have algorithms in them, this goes into a bit more detail of the parts, and there's some labels for those diagrams: receptors, alimentators, correlators, homeostat. So now the instructions are saying, please click this next worksheet tab, the word learner. And so these are the diagrams for the label. You have a receptor up here, which receives information from the environment as input. You have a correlator, which then stores that information, so it's like the memory storage unit. The alimentator down here takes in energy from the environment, and the accumulator, which is like a battery, stores that energy to run the whole system. The homeostat, which is in the middle here, that's kind of the brains of the whole operation, that monitors all the inputs and outputs and the functioning of the system overall, and decides what to do next. So you might think of a thermostat even in an oven or an air conditioner, and it basically runs the whole show. It's like the nucleus of a cell or a brain in a body, central nervous system. You also have the effector, which produces the reaction on the environment or the output. So this whole process results in positive or negative feedback loops, and maybe even homeostasis, where the system inputs equal the outputs. So those are the parts of the system. Now the arrow wants us to go over this way. So here's one I prepared earlier. This is a little system with those parts. The instructions up here say press the do it button in the system. So we go over to the do it button, and if we press that, the the system just processed some information, and we can just keep pressing that button, and it's having outputs over here. Just press that and it does a new action each time. And so what this system is it's a word learner system. So this is the receptor here. Its environment is the 100 most commonly used English words. So those are all listed down here, and that's the environment that the system is in. And it inputs a word when it takes in information into the receptor. So in this case, it took a random word from its environment, which was the word when. It takes that information in, puts it in the correlator or the memory, stores that information. So there's the word when. And then the homeostat, which decides what's to do, has to look up the word when and find out what kind of word type it is. In this case, it found out that it's an adverb and a conjunction. And then the system has an effect, two effects, one output here and one output here. Excuse me. The output is speech. In this case, it said this dialogue here, which is this output, which is a fact. The word when is a adverb and a conjunction. And at the same time, because it knew what that word was, what word type it was, it made the system happy. So it has an emotional output up here as well. So each time we click it, it learns a new word. Now that word, it just ate the next random word from the environment, which was down here, and somewhere here in the environment. And there was the input into the receptor. It stored it in memory in the correlator. The homeostat went and looked it up, but it said, I don't know what kind of word that is. So the output said the word more is don't know. And the effect of that at the same time, because it didn't know what the word was it made the system sad. Oh, poor little system. What it does, what the homeostat and the effector is doing there, is when it eats a new word from its environment, the homeostat tells it to go and look up that word in the word category table, which is down here, kind of like a dictionary or a reference table or a lookup table. So it goes down and finds the word in these 100 words here. And the only problem is it only knows about 50 of the 100 words. So the first 50 all have definitions for what word type it is, but the next 50 words, pretty much it says, I don't know. It doesn't have that information in the dictionary or the database that it's looking at here. Although it does know the word oil is a noun and a verb, which is kind of spooky if you think that this is the 100 most commonly used words when you think about climate change. But anyway, so that's what it's looking at. And so half the time the system, because it eats words at random in its environment, half the time roughly it knows what it is because it can find it here, and the other half it doesn't know, and that makes it depressed. So it's a good little learning system. You can just keep pressing do it and it'll learn a new word. So a word came in here, the word A, then it went into the memory storage, the correlator, the homeostat went and looked it up. It's a determiner and a suffix. And so the output, the effector told it to speak the word A, is a determiner and suffix. Let me just rearrange the boundary of the environment there. And so that made the system as a whole happy because it knew what the word was. You can think of lots of things as a system. Here's an amoeba, which is also a system. So the nucleus would be the brain of the operation, and that's like the homeostat that tells all the other parts what to do and makes decisions. And the inputs in that case would be algae, bacteria, and other protozoans and dead skin cells and gross stuff like that. Anyway, so that's the system in its environment. This one happens to learn words, but you could have numbers, so it could learn what types of numbers were odds, evens, primes, etc., or classifying plants or animals. Yeah, basically that's how a system works when it has those parts, and hopefully that's helpful in understanding how systems work. In terms of these two components of the system or subsystems, systems run on energy, information, and matter. So the information that's coming in is the words through here, through the mouth, if you like. The energy input, through the eyes and the ears. The mouth up here would be the energy input, eating food and water if it's an organic system. But in this case, this system here runs on electricity because it's an Excel computer program. So the thing that's taking in energy, the alimentator, is just taking in 240 volts from the power socket that runs the computer, that runs the program, and so that energy gets stored in the battery and runs the computer, which runs this system as a whole. So anyway, there's one great little system that can be happy and sad depending on half the time whether it knows the word or not and what type it is. So hopefully that's a fun little explanation for systems and how they work. So if you feel like, download the Excel program and enjoy. And thanks for watching.